Captain Picard. Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
My Readier Room.
Hello, and welcome to the Readier Room, not to be confused with Matterstream. This is the only TNG rewatch podcast with actual on-set stories from those who were there. My name is Mitchell Mells, Chief Consultant Services at Paramount, and with me is my life partner, Brandon Hobbs, Head of Resources Management. Brandon, how are you doing on this fine Valentine's Day?
Oh, I am doing great, Mitch. Just a little bit of spoilers, I guess, for the audience here, but I am very excited to be discussing what is probably the first decent episode we've seen so far.
Yeah, it's the high watermark of the series so far. So we are certainly head over heels for this episode. Love is in the air everywhere. It's Valentine's Day. Struck by Cupid's arrow. We got it all going on. Speaking of things we got going on, we have our question of the week. Are you excited?
Yes. Very excited.
Our first question of the week, of any week, comes from our Readier Room fans. This fan is known as the Greek Hoplite. Ooh, not going to get into any Spartan wars with him, you know. So, he asks, please tell me the bagel preferences of the cast members. And you wouldn't believe this. But
oh no,
I get this
I think
question.
This is something we're actually very qualified to answer.
We are, and it's a question I've been asked before.
Yeah. I mean, there are all those times where food services couldn't really deliver on the bagels, and then we would go pick them up for the cast, right?
Right. We've been there, on the ground level, like on the beaches, getting these bagels, so we know exactly. I mean, I've had to put in this order before. It's really amazing. So, everybody in life has their own personality. Everybody in life has their own tastes. Nowhere is that more true than with our cast members over at TNG. Everybody was different. So, you had Brent. He always had his everything bagels. He said, give me everything but the kitchen sink on that bagel. And we did. Mm-hmm. Gates, a little more health conscious. Just a plain bagel, a little bit of cream cheese. Was very unhappy if you put too much cream cheese, but a reasonable amount. Will Wheaton, he always got the salt bagels, which are pretty good, but he'd always eat them by first, licking the salt off the top of the bagel, which I never tried it, but it was always a strange thing to see on set.
It was unsettling to watch.
He was really making love to his bagels.
Yeah, well, I mean, perfect for Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's true.
Very thematic.
Love is in the air. So Patrick Stewart, he would get an egg sandwich on a chocolate bagel. Always specified it had to be chocolate. Let's see. Jonathan Frakes, what did he get? Oh my god. So Jonathan Frakes, he insisted always on having an onion bagel because according to him, onions are an aphrodisiac, he would say. I don't know if that was the source of his powers or what, but he did not go a single day without an onion bagel. It was really bad because sometimes cast members would have to have a close-up dialogue scene with him, especially the female leads who he kissed, and his breath would just be so oniony. we always had to warn people.
That's right.
Oh my god.
And the wonderful thing about Frakes is you could never tell when he was kind of joking about something.
Yeah.
Or if he was being serious. And, obviously he would eventually take that talent on to fact or fiction.
Right. When he would, propose these seemingly outlandish events. But
right.
For the first, couple seasons, we'd have a chuckle with him. It's aphrodisiac, right? And he'd be like, you know it. But after, 5-6 seasons of insisting on eating onions every morning, I have to believe he was being serious. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's John. Denise, she had a chocolate chip bagel, but more often than not, she would just eat the chocolate chips, pick them out of the bagel and then cast it aside, which explains the complexion that she had on the show. Let's see, Marina. Marina was always a bitch about this. Like, we'd offer to get her a bagel, and she'd be like, no, I'll have a slice of untoasted white bread, unbuttered. And we'd be like, really? Like, that's what you're gonna eat? And just every day.
And we had to get the bread special for her.
Right. It was not, you couldn't just go to the grocery store and get like a loaf of Wonder Bread and have Marina eat it throughout the week. It was always like, you have to get from my special bakery a slice of sandwich bread with the right thickness, and God help you if a speck of butter land. Oh my God.
But it was always a different bakery than the bagels.
Yeah. God forbid,
we'd
right?
have to make 2 trips. Yeah. It was insane.
I remember,
absolutely insane.
She didn't specify the bakery until we told her where we were going to get the bagels. And at that point, she's like, no, you got to go somewhere else. Ugh.
Right.
I'm still angry about it. Like,
no, I think about this probably once a week.
Yeah. Every time I see a bagel. Or white bread for that reason. She could have, like...
Now you got me fired up now.
Not everybody ate bagels, so that's fine. But, like, to...
Right.
To just insist so heavily on having something so specific. Like, bring your own white bread. Like, fuck.
Seriously.
Jesus.
Just take care of yourself then.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's, precisely what LeVar and Michael did, because they both refused to eat bagels.
Right.
Citing it as, quote, white people shit.
Yeah, I think that was more Michael than LeVar, but LeVar was more than happy to kind of play along with it, like with his cool older brother, So. And
here's a little extra tidbit for the audience. Gene would not eat bagels either. Citing it
not this.
As for cultural reasons. But what he would do is take the entire tub of cream cheese we supplied for everyone and just eat from it with a spoon.
I have the image in my mind of just like a spoonful of cream cheese and it making its way to Gene's mouth.
Yeah. He really tucked into that.
Maybe Marina wasn't so unreasonable. Like, no butter, no fuss, just...
Well, I mean, at least Gene kind of took care of himself. We didn't have to make any special trips.
That's true. I mean, I don't know if I would call eating cream cheese by the spoonful taking care of oneself, but,
But at least we didn't have to worry about it.
That's true. What's cool about this, though, is that, and, we on set would talk about this all the time, is how the breakfast orders of everybody kind of gave you these windows into their personality.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, like I said, this isn't the first time I've been asked this, and I think fans know that when you're really interested in a celebrity, it's the minor details of their life that really tells you more about them than any kind of entertainment interview ever could.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so it's valuable insights. So thank you.
I hope the audience has gleaned something.
Yeah,
from this.
I hope the Greek hoplite has gleaned something before he, is on his way to clash with that guy who brought the elephants over the mountains.
Oh, that's right, Mitch.
But that's not our only question of the week. You got one more for us?
Yeah. So our second question is from IR MacGyver. He asks,
did he put this question together with some string and bubble gum?
So this is actually a really good question.
Really?
It's so how did Patrick Stewart really like his tea?
How? Because he's always drinking tea on the set or on the show.
Tea. Yeah, and so the reason this question is so great is because it's a really good example of the way expectations on television can really color our perception of what we see, right? Mm-hmm. Patrick Stewart never drank tea on set, ever. Right?
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, every time he was filmed drinking tea, it was actually Coca-Cola.
Right, but because that's brown, dark.
Yes. Since you're told it's tea, so your brain just tricks you, and it's absolutely crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And you would never know that just from watching it. It never zooms in, and it wasn't high definition. You're not going to see the fizz or the bubbles of it. It's only something you would know if you were there. And
right.
Luckily
he loved his Coke.
Luckily for MacGyver, we were there.
He loved his Coke. The amount of refills he would get when he's off camera.
Right.
Remember that?
It was so annoying though, because he would drink a bunch of Coke that he would accidentally belch while we were filming. Whether he was on screen or off, and it would get picked up by the microphone, it would just ruin so many takes. And we're like, Patrick, put down the Coke. Oh my god.
number
A
of takes we
a
had to do.
but a lot of celebrities in the 80s had coke problems, so I'm not
That's
surprised.
true.
But yeah, so
Great
everybody,
question.
thank you for these questions. If you have any questions of your own, feel free to email them to us at thereadierroom@gmail.com. That's with a capital T, a capital R, and a capital R, so it goes to the right place. And we're taking questions, anything you want to know about the cast, production, we got you covered.
That's right.
So, today, we are talking about episode 5 of The Next Generation, otherwise known as The Good One. This one, where no one has gone before. As we mentioned, we're both very excited about it. So, what's got you so excited?
Well, first I must note that this episode takes its title, as any fan would know, from the original series, first season, third episode, where no man has gone before. And this is the first time, I think, that Trek has really come together, for this series. We're treated to a very Trek-like story, I think.
Yeah, up until now, it's not been very Star Trek-y. It's been like, how do you know how to describe it? Aside from like ridiculous, but
yeah,
or maybe more Star Wars. I don't know, but just you look at
maybe more Lost in Space.
Maybe more Lost in Space. Maybe more Lost, which hadn't been filmed yet. But you look at the Star Trek movies, like the original series movies. And the tone of those, the tone of like this, where like they'll just have like a long silent shot, like they're trying to imitate 2001, and then this where like Tasha Yar is fighting with black people on a jungle gym, and it's worlds apart. And then this episode starts, and the tone is just, and the pacing is immediately just slower, more very different from what you come before it. So you're immediately thinking, "Oh man, I'm gonna get something different this time, something new." But
it's slower, but it's never boring. Really,
it's never boring. It's confusing sometimes for some reasons, several reasons, but it's never boring. Yeah. And I think it's okay, first of all, for sci-fi to be just a little boring sometimes. If it's in service of establishing like the science of the science fiction,
Right. Yeah.
People have such a disdain for what they call technobabble, but I don't get it. It's like, yeah, I understand that a lot of these things are, I don't know the science behind it. I don't get it. You don't get it either. But it's like those things are very key to making science fiction what it is, to having reasons that things work the way that they do, instead of just it essentially being magic.
Yeah, but I don't think Star Trek has ever really gone into the realm of technobabble. You might have a throwaway line here or there, about how something is working, by yeah, exactly. So I don't think that's ever been an issue with Star Trek, really.
I don't think it's been an issue either, but I do think that many people do think that, because I hear that very often. It's like, oh, the technobabble, and that, we've used that term on set before to talk about like some of the lines of dialogue. It's not that it didn't make sense, because it did, because it was sourced from scientists and people who knew what they were talking about. But just because it's so impenetrable for the common man, but I just don't think that's a bad thing.
True. Well, it's just intelligent writing is what it is. You have to be intelligent to understand it. That's all.
It's a very highbrow show.
It is. It is.
But anyway, so this episode is about a very science fiction-y thing. Like, the Enterprise travels, it breaks like all known possibilities of how fast one can warp travel, and they end up in completely uncharted space, like hundreds of light years away, that they would never make it back home before they died. And that's a very cool concept, because it's not like we get there and there's like undersea space monsters and we have to fight them. It's just, we're just kind of lost. What do we do? What do we think about that?
Yeah. My personal opinion is that with a few tweaks, this could have easily just been the pilot.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think the problem with well, I mean, we talked about the problems with the pilot, but it's like, why would you introduce the show with such a unique element that's not going to be seen in more than a handful of other episodes, namely the Q stuff? Mm-hmm. Like, what you see in the pilot, you just never see again. There's no omnipotent being again, other than a very few Q episodes. But with this episode,
yeah, and it's definitely not that dynamic. When you see Q again, the dynamic is completely different.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So it's just,
but go ahead.
If you loved what you saw in the pilot, you might be disappointed by what's coming next. If this was the pilot and you loved this is pretty indicative of what TNG is. Mm-hmm. And it's not a story that involves, like, there's like two extraneous characters, but there's not like a whole new society. It's not a whole new planet. It's just on the Enterprise with the Enterprise crew. So it's a good opportunity to introduce all of them.
Even if they wanted to keep the Q idea, they could have worked Q into this kind of episode.
That's true. If you replaced the Traveler with Q, I don't think you would need to do a lot of rewriting to make that concept work.
Right. It's just the difference of the Traveler being benevolent and Q obviously being kind of mischievous. So it's really just the latter half of the episode that changes in that way.
True.
Where basically what would have to happen is the Enterprise has to be resourceful and figure out what they're going to do to fix where Q has left them off. You know what I mean?
Right. And
which actually would have been very interesting.
It would have been. And it makes more sense in a way that Q would trick this engineer and like use him as a vessel for what he's doing, rather than this benevolent being who is also just lying to this guy's face and manipulating him.
Right. Wow, I think we just solved season 1 of Star Trek.
Throw it out, rewrite the whole thing. We're coming back.
That's it for the episode, everyone.
But it is worth noting that they do kind of use that that setup for a Q episode in a couple seasons when they introduce the Borg.
They do. Yes, they do, exactly.
And the only way they get back out is like, I think Picard concedes to Q. He's like, "Oh, Q, we do need your help." And then Q's like, "All right," and then teleport you back to wherever you came from. Which isn't like a very satisfying conclusion, but at the same time, it's not one that would have worked with the Q that they introduce in the first episode.
Yeah, because that episode was all about, how great humanity is in the face of this godlike being.
Right.
But that's also why that episode works so well, is because it's exactly what we were just talking about. It's you get stranded billions of light years from home by some omnipotent entity, and you have to figure out how to get yourself out. And I guess, sometimes it is just kowtowing to it, right?
Yeah, it's such an interesting premise that it served as the entirety of Star Trek Voyager.
That's true. But yeah, I guess this season, obviously, it was kind of they didn't really have much direction in terms of where they wanted the story to go from here on out, except for apparently the Wesley character.
Yeah, which what is set up for Wesley here plays out over the entire 7 seasons of the show, and is resolved in the final season.
Yeah,
which is you haven't seen that episode, right? The conclusion of this.
I didn't see when it aired. No.
Okay. So
I was a little checked out by then. I think I'd kind of gotten used to seeing things on set and imagining what they would look like.
Well, the thing is, when you're on set, you don't see like the edited version of it, so you might see the filming, but you're not really going to be clued into the intricacies of how the story plays out.
Yeah.
If they're filming like a one-on-one scene with Wesley and Picard, how many people are really on set for that? And that could be integral to the plot. But
I guess it could be. I don't know. I feel like I got the gist of most episodes by the end.
Yeah, the gist. But something like a character's final conclusion, you need the concrete details of that. But really, the point I'm getting at, though, is not about the events, but just that episode itself, the way it premiered and finished and was edited, was just not very good. So, the payoff for this confusing, befuddling episode was in and of itself bungled, and it's like great, like this is what we had to endure that for, and you can flip whichever one of these episodes this and that refer to, and it's still not satisfying.
Yeah.
It was a bad arc at the beginning, and it was a bad arc at the end.
Well, it's interesting that arc even came up to begin with.
Yeah.
Or like it was devised in this way. Because, I mean, so you'll remember, the story team picked this script up from a couple of independent writers, right?
Oh, yeah.
So one of them was, they wrote that stupid novel.
Oh, fuck. I mean, there's a billion stupid Star Trek novels.
There's a billion of them, whatever. So one of them wrote some stupid Star Trek novel.
Right.
We don't read them because they're not canon.
Because why would you?
Why would you? So you'll remember there was a big shakeup with this one because we had a lot of clashing opinions with the writers' room on the original script, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened for the audience is a bunch of people got laid off. And the script
called it Black Thursday.
It was a Black Thursday indeed. And the script ended up being rewritten internally, to almost unanimous agreement, I might add, to feature an adult alien with whom Wesley would have an implicit, I guess, sexual relationship.
Yeah,
right.
It was yes.
Yeah. I maybe more than implicit. I'm not really sure. But my point is this served the end of introducing this arc that we're talking about,
right?
Which is surprising to me that, like I just said, it's surprising to me that they thought of this like this early on. Perhaps more importantly, though, it served to bring attention to the burgeoning, and I guess at the time much maligned MAP movement.
Yeah.
For those not in the know, that's minor attracted person.
Well, as we all know, that movement started in Hollywood, so this was like the kind of the hotbed.
This was the jumping off point.
Right.
This was the jumping off point, and I think it was a really important decision. I think we can all say this was another win for inclusivity here.
Right, and it was great, of course. I'm all for inclusivity. It was a very diverse show. I think it could have been handled a little better. Like, they had the idea, okay, we're going to hire like a MAP aligned individual just to really bring it home, because everybody always has these issues when somebody who's not of a certain group plays somebody who is,
right.
With transgendered people, that's a big issue now. So we were kind of getting ahead of the game. We're going to hire one of these people to play this role. It'll be great. And there was a lot. He gave a lot of input on what a MAP aligned individual would be like, how they would act. So a lot of the way that he spoke, his tone, was his input. The way that he interacted with Wesley physically, that was a lot of his improvisation. It really gave the show an air of authenticity. Now, in kind of a funny story, Wesley didn't know that, not Wesley, Will didn't know that.
Will.
Right. I always get the two confused.
It's hard to separate the two, isn't it?
Yeah. Will didn't know that the actor was going to kind of like take things to this next realistic level. And there's quite a few takes of Will just looking like incredibly distraught over what was happening. But he was
very taken aback.
Right. He was new to acting. He was a child actor. He hadn't had that many roles yet. So he didn't really know how to roll with it when somebody's improvising with you. And
right.
I think it was Frakes who pulled him aside and was like, this is show business. This is, how you gotta respond to these new things. It's not always going to go by the script. You got to be ready for improv, and you got to be as quick as they are.
Especially as a child actor.
Right. So, he tried to get in there. Will tried to be, physical himself, sometimes a little inappropriately, but, he was trying. We all appreciated that. It was pretty valuable. And I like that on our set, we were able not only to utilize great talents, but cultivate and bring up new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely. I couldn't be more happy with the way things turned out with the script and this character and this actor all kind of culminating into this big show of support for this really minority community.
right, it was a true celebration of diversity, I like to say, which I think Star Trek is known for.
Very, very well known for.
Everybody,
we were really pushing the envelope with this.
Yeah, I mean, everybody talks about the interracial kiss in the 1960s, and now, after TNG aired, everybody was talking about the map relationship, first on-screen map relationship in television. Another big milestone for the Star Trek franchise.
Huge milestone.
Yeah. But I think that, not from a production point of view, but in the final product, that dynamic didn't work so well for me because of the way that it was kind of clumsily put into the show. Like, we know why it was put in there, but if you don't know that, it just comes off as a little clumsy. And you have this, yes, that guy's the catalyst for the events of the plot, but I never found him as interesting as the struggle the characters were in itself.
No, he's not. And, that's, again, we're going back to what we started out with this episode, where it really it doesn't put the Enterprise in a situation where they're allowed to solve anything themselves.
Right.
The entire episode, they're relying on, like, he makes a mistake. I'm not sure because I think the reason that's given is he was distracted. I'm not sure if he was distracted
by Wesley.
Wesley.
Yes.
And how sexy he is. But I think the reason that's given is he makes a mistake, and that's why they're left, out in the wilderness of space. But he also passes out.
Right.
And we just have to wait for him to wake up for him to save them.
So what distracts him?
It's not it.
What distracts him about Wesley is two-part. Yes, it's like his boyish look, but it's also Wesley demonstrates a profound understanding of the calculations that he's putting into the engine.
Yeah, of course. So for the third episode in 5 episodes, Wesley demonstrates his superhuman abilities.
Right. Which is a well they keep going back to and will soon be dry. But so compare it to the Q episode, like Picard learns humility in accepting that he can't do something without Q's help, and that's what saves the crew. In this, it's like, all right, we're going to force this guy to wake up, putting his own life at risk because he's passed out, and they revive him prematurely. And all they do is literally wish for a good outcome, and that is the extent of the Enterprise's involvement in this.
And so can I just, quick aside here. Mm-hmm. They pay a lot of lip service to the fact that Crusher, the Doctor, cannot treat the Traveler.
Right.
But apparently her medical tool to revive people works on him?
Yeah, I don't know if that's like an actual medical tool or like a taser or what, but it apparently can wake this guy up not once but twice.
Yeah. I was just a little thrown off by that bit.
It's just plot convenience,
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I get that.
I would describe 99% of what Dr. Crusher does as plot convenience. Like that time she brought somebody back from the dead a few episodes ago.
Right. Well, so she and Troy are basically the same kind of plot device.
Yeah. Well, so with Crusher, I don't know really what anybody was thinking, but there was a reason for Troy's, I guess, plot convenience, whatever you want to call it. So Dr. Crusher always does exactly what is needed for the plot. She'll revive the dead. She'll be able to operate on beings that she previously could not comprehend their biology, whatever. But Troy is like a very consistent, I don't know how this guy's feeling, or this guy who is displaying very obvious arrogant traits is feeling very arrogant and self-confident. Like she gives the most obvious answers. And
obvious but also inconsistent.
Yes. And you might be thinking, like, well, she's a betazoid, right? She should be clued into exactly what people are thinking, and that's the point. So the idea is that Troy, who presents herself as a betazoid, was not actually a betazoid. and it would be like season 2 or 3. It would come out in an episode, and it was supposed to be a piece of like metafiction, because yes, the characters on the show are feeling betrayed by Troy because she lied to them and for whatever reason, but so is the audience. The audience had spent all this time getting to know Troy and liking her and getting attached to that character, that when it was revealed that she's a fake, it would be like a very upsetting moment. And it was a very...
Wow.
Yeah. It was such a high-level bit of writing to lay these seeds early. And we kind of see that very strongly in this episode when they ask Troy for her input on things. Now, unfortunately, there's a wrench thrown into this, in that we would regularly poll our audiences on what characters they liked in TNG. And, at the top was always Data, by a large margin, number one. And at the bottom, also by a large margin, would always be Troy. And it was so disappointing because they can't pull this bait and switch relying on the audience being attached to this character if they hate her. And
right.
Boy, did they. So they had to abandon that plot, but once they abandon it, you can see at the same time a rise of scenes that are just Troy in her therapist office, like doing her job well, by giving therapy to the crew. So once they didn't need her for this plot device, they could actually use her as a therapist effectively. So, God shuts a door, but he opens a window, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, I can only imagine, her low popularity was probably due to her hairdos.
Yeah,
in these episodes.
I mean, that's the same reason that Data was so popular, just because of how attractive Brent Spiner is. But
he was very, very attractive. I mean, I had a hard time controlling myself on set with him around.
Right. He got a lot of fan mail. Let's just say that. But
yeah.
Troy was nothing against Marina Sirtis, but the way that they designed her look, her costumes, her hair style was meant to be, just not. I don't know what it was meant to be, but it was not very appealing at all. I think we likened her to an insect at times.
Yeah, yep.
The beady black eyes certainly not helping. So, but anyway, so in this episode, they have the Traveler. He comes up. Actually, I want to say something at the very beginning of this episode. The first 5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, first couple minutes of this episode are so strange in their tone. From Star Trek before it and Star Trek after it. It starts with like an argument between basically everybody on the bridge. It's just having this passive-aggressive discussion about the engines and the guy and the engineer coming aboard the ship. And what's strange about it is that like there's no context for their frustration or their anger or anything, because we're used to these guys working along and getting along pretty well. So it immediately starts, and you're like, what? And then Riker goes to the engine room to meet this engineer who comes on, and he just takes off like a fucking hurricane, just insulting everybody, demanding that he's the captain and not Riker, undermining Riker's authority. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's very fast-paced, and everyone's very antagonistic towards each other.
Right, for no reason. Like, the only person you have that you believe would be antagonistic is this engineer, and that's only because you don't know him. But
the engineer. Engineer Argyle.
No, not that
engineer. Argyle.
There's two engineers. So Argyle is the one who works on the Enterprise, who's like a nothing.
No, of course. I thought you were talking to the Enterprise engineer. Of course he would be antagonistic, because you got another engineer coming on from...
Oh, that's true. He is kind of antagonistic towards this guy, but this guy who comes on with the Traveler, remember there's two of them, he's also a dick to everybody. So truly, everybody is just a huge asshole. I mean, there's no reason for him. There's a reason for the guy coming onto the Enterprise to be a dick, but it's not an in-universe reason. It's a writing reason.
Yeah.
So
well, okay. Let's dig into that one.
Right. So this guy, this foreign engineer, who comes on and starts like berating everybody. The reason he is so blockheaded and rude as he is because he's actually based on somebody. So Gene gave input on his character, and he's like, I need you to base this character on my ex-wife's current boyfriend. So the story goes that whenever Gene would meet this guy, whatever divorce proceedings or whatever, he would just kind of get like belittled by him, a little bullied. Gene really did not like the guy, and he was definitely in that kind of arrogant Chad space. So Gene was like, "That's a great personality to have as an antagonist on the show. So we're gonna bring this guy in. He's gonna behave just like my ex-wife's boyfriend, and then eventually he'll get his comeuppance because somebody who acts like this is definitely gonna be hated by the audience, and it'll be a great force to see." Yeah. So he comes on, and it kind of works pretty well. By the end of the episode, he's reduced to like this incompetent crying mess because all of his prowess was given to him by the Traveler, and he just kind of owned it even though it wasn't really his. And
completely emasculated.
Right, completely emasculated by the Enterprise crew themselves, who get to the bottom of it. You know, somebody like Picard, who, you know, is key in upending this guy. You know, Picard's old, he's aging, he's bald, he's not like at the fit of his physical game. Really became a stand-in for Gene in this interaction. So it was the first documented use of Star Trek as a tool of revenge, I like to say.
And it won't be the last either.
It won't be the last. And it made for some pretty good television, because sometimes, you know, they always say life is stranger than fiction. The people that we meet can really be good pieces of inspiration, I want to say.
Yeah, and I do hope, you know, the audience can kind of appreciate this episode in a new light, knowing this, because there's a lot to pick out with this in mind throughout the episode.
Right, but that's just one of the two engineers we see in this episode.
That's just one of the two engineers, and I know we definitely want to talk about this other engineer because
he's named after a sweater.
He's not only is he named after a sweater. I actually think it's a pattern.
You're right.
You know, yeah. But it's also, you know, kind of an enraging story.
It's
right.
It's a dark spot in Trek TNG history.
It's definitely a dark spot. So, Chief Engineer Argyle. We actually had to look his name up after watching the episode, even though they probably said his name. I'm not really sure.
I don't think they did.
I'm not sure if they did, but either way, the point is he's a very unremarkable character played by a very unremarkable actor. Really makes you wonder why he's even featured to this extent, despite never showing up before, because engineering is a pretty important place. I mean, we've spent quite a bit of time, even over the course of the first 4 episodes, dealing with engineering. And obviously in the original series, you have Scotty, right?
Right.
Who's basically the face of engineering.
He also beams people up.
He beams people up, he beams people down, right?
He's a beamer.
So, he's a beamer. He beams. So, the reason this is such an issue is that this is actually the episode where we plan to promote Geordi to chief engineer.
Right, which is something that happens later on in the series.
It does happen later on, but the insightful viewer will recognize that we really don't have much of a place for Geordi for most of the first season. He's just kind of there.
Just there.
And this is why. A couple of higher-ups were really just not for promoting him to chief engineer, I guess.
Yeah, they had a problem with LeVar specifically. That's how I would put it.
Well, LeVar, but I mean, just also the idea of a black man being in a position of authority.
Right.
Real dinosaurs.
Really makes my skin crawl hearing that.
Yeah, and I know quite a few of us were all pretty enraged by that. I mean, not just because of the injustice of it all, but because of how many rewrites it required for scripts that were already in development. And, basically just having to have Geordi stuck on the bridge all the time.
Right.
There
was a lot of grumbling, especially once this episode had really gone into production, because people less forward-thinking people on the set or in the writer's room would say, like, oh, we can have a map relationship, but we can't have a black chief engineer. Like, really?
Yeah, well, it did help that the map relationship on display was white.
Yeah, it made it more palatable to those producers who kind of blocked the Geordi decision.
Well, I think a lot of the producers were maps, actually. God bless them.
Right. Yeah. That explains the presence of Will on the show to begin with.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely does.
Right.
And I think Will definitely did his share of favors in getting into that set, as he should.
Right.
But just because the producers are matched does not excuse their racism, obviously.
No, you can't. You can't just throw around your minority card as an excuse to disenfranchise other minorities. It's just not how it works.
No, it's not fair and it's not right.
No.
And basically, what happened was we kind of just had to wait it out and wait for one of them to die before we could go ahead with that in-universe promotion there.
But luckily,
which thankfully did eventually happen.
Yeah. Luckily, that man died, and we were able to.
Yeah. Oh, thank God.
LeVar was ecstatic about it because his amount of screen time just shot up.
Oh yeah.
Thank God for that. But
thank God for that.
So we have those two engineers. They come on with the Traveler, and like the setup is that the Traveler and this other engineer are there to monkey with the engines of the ship to give it like an increase of efficiency, but nobody really can figure out how they're doing it because other ships in the Federation have gotten it, but nobody knows why or how, really. So everybody's suspicious.
Riker is almost uncharacteristically concerned with this engineering minutia.
It is strange because Riker's kind of like this cowboy figure who's down to go in the away team and do all this exciting stuff and have sex with women.
He's a Kirk stand-in.
And very rarely is Kirk like, oh, we could get 2% more efficiency to our engines if we just adjusted these tachyon emitters.
Yeah.
It's just not. It doesn't make sense for him to really be into this. Like, I get him kind of wanting to stick it to this guy who is undermining him to his face when he's like, "Oh, I don't want to talk to you. I got to talk to the captain." Like, that makes sense. Right. But Riker's enthusiasm to be on this assignment in the first place. Like, why do you need any?
The show opens with him being antagonistic towards this idea to begin with.
Right.
Whereas you would expect, like, in later episodes when Geordi is the chief engineer, he would be the one dealing with this kind of stuff.
And there would just be no higher up there at all. There doesn't need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So, they're in the engine room doing their thing, and this is where Wesley's introduced to the story. Because Wesley, for some reason, is just there working in the engine room. Despite...
Yeah, and Is this a normal thing for civilians to be working in the engineering?
I don't think it's a normal thing. I like to believe that it's not.
What do civilians do on the Enterprise, actually? 'Cause I'm really kind of racking my brain here. They work in the cafeteria? There is no cafeteria because they just materialize their food.
They have a barber.
Okay, so there's one job.
Okay. And I think it's really just families of crew members.
Right.
That there is a school. They always mention, like, when Worf's kid is on board, he's always going to school with the other children.
There are school scenes.
Yes. So there's really no reason for Wesley to be in engineering. No, there's not. But plot convenience. Because he has to display his Wunderkind style to the Traveler. And Wesley's like, oh, the way you're working on this engine isn't just time and space, but thoughts and feelings, too. Just something completely ridiculous. And the Traveler's like, you can't say that around here. They'll burn you alive like a witch, or whatever.
Yeah, which first of all, they wouldn't.
Right.
And second of all, any schmuck could state that. and be considered special by this alien, I guess.
It takes
Because
it takes a lot to extrapolate that from like a shitty 3D rendering of the Enterprise surrounded by party streamers that was on their console.
it takes a lot to extrapolate that, but also, I mean, you could just transplant some hippie sitting next to this alien, and the alien would think he's a genius.
I mean, hippies do often operate on a higher level of cognition.
To be fair, they do.
To be fair. So, this is the first glimpse of the Wesley Traveler relationship, which, regardless of how well you think it works, and for what reasons, has a completely different tone than all of Star Trek, I want to say.
Yeah.
And
we talked about this while we were watching the episode, where the A plot, it's hard to separate this into A plots and B plots because they overlap quite a bit. But if you consider the Enterprise getting stranded and the crew having to figure out what's going on in the A plot, then the B plot would be Wesley and this alien's relationship, which reads almost like E.T.
Yes, that's a you said that when we were watching it. That's a really good way of putting it, because it's very soft and it's very tender. It's this very higher level force interacting with somebody slightly below his level, but it's somebody that he's a real affection for. And because of that, when I think of sci-fi, for example, I think of like cold and hard and maybe tense, but not very emotional. And this is a very, very emotional relationship, even when it's not like a highly charged moment. It's just a lot, like I said, a lot of tenderness. And that tone does not gel well with the show at any point in its time.
Yeah, I think that's a good word, is the tenderness bit. I mean, it's really just dealing with the fact that your main character is a child here.
Right.
Which, I mean, yeah, you could just bring up so many points throughout the course of the show where that just does not gel.
It would have
and
worked.
I think that's probably why a lot of people dislike Wesley.
It would have worked better, and I think this would exacerbate some of the problems people have with Wesley, but this episode in particular would have worked better if Wesley was a younger child, I think. Because at times, the way that the Traveler talks to him and interacts with him is like one is interacting with a very young child. And I'm not sure if that's like a way of communicating just how extra dimensional the Traveler is. But yeah, when you have a kid who's like, I don't know, 14, 15 at the time, maybe 16, you kind of, that's where you start transitioning to talking to them more like an adult, even if they are, just a stupid teenager. You can't use your soft voice and like, pet their hair. You can't do that.
I mean, I think that the Traveler interacts with the adults in that way too, and in a certain way, he just takes a liking to Wesley that kind of opens that character up to interacting with him more like that. Like you said, I think it was a way to kind of highlight how superior he is. Maybe it doesn't play so well because of our preconceived notions, I suppose, of where a teenager would be at that point in their mental thing. They're thinking about everything really. It's less about the Traveler, I guess, and more about the way Wesley reciprocates the relationship.
Yeah, because you have Wesley, like, he sits on that stool behind the Traveler, and he's just like sitting in
like a very suggestive way.
Yeah, but also somewhat innocently, like a child would.
Yeah.
And Wesley's always seen like playing with toys that he's built, and like just always acting incredibly juvenile. There's never any of the angst or the emotional frustration that like a teenager would typically have. And I'm not saying that he always has to be angry or anything, but they just always show him as a very not yet developed individual.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, think back on The Naked Now, how if there was that angst, and that angst was what caused the conflict, that would probably be actually a little more interesting.
Right. If Wesley is like going at Captain Picard, like oh, well, you're not the captain anymore. You always do this, that, and the other, but you never let me on the bridge. Like, something like that would make a lot more sense than this unilaterally positive, childlike personality.
As a mongoloid plays with blocks on the floor next to you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But yeah, that is a good point, and I think we're kind of honing in on why Wesley is kind of poorly written so far.
Right. And it's I think it's too reductive to just say, oh, he's a child. Child shouldn't be on Star Trek. Finish. Like that's the end of my criticism. I don't think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I think the character as set up, like a prodigious youth, could have been a valuable story writing tool as a character.
It could have. But unfortunately, they just did not take advantage of that opportunity whatsoever, and instead decided to make him some kind of weird wish fulfillment character. But yeah, we all know why that happened.
Indeed. Indeed.
So moving along with the plot, the Traveler, unbeknownst to everyone at this point, right?
Right.
I guess passes out while doing his calculations.
Yeah, he like just kind of throws himself onto the console. Like the physical acting of it was kind of out there for me. But yes, he passes out on the console, and this is what causes the thrust of the episode. Like, because he's passing out while the engines are being monkeyed with, the engines like supercharge, and the Enterprise is thrown across the galaxy, hundreds of light years away.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's where the real meat of the episode starts.
Yeah. And it's also at this moment, I think, that Wesley is tuned into the fact that it's the Traveler who is the Force here, and not the human engineer that he came with. Because he tries to go to Riker, and is like, Riker, Mr. Riker, that engineer's a fake. It's all the Traveler. It's all this alien guy. And Riker's like, I don't fucking have time for this. Go play with your toys, Wesley.
And yeah, there's another thing where we discussed this while we were watching it. We've seen this kid. Riker has watched this kid with his head in his hands save the Enterprise from complete disaster, and he still just has no respect for them.
Right. Wesley saved the Enterprise while drunk, while an inept Riker could only watch, and he just never gives him the time of day.
And I think this actually continues. Wesley just gets zero respect for anything he does, despite being the most conveniently written teenager in like all of television.
He gets a promotion in this episode, and
he gets a promotion
for doing nothing.
For doing nothing, and despite working in engineering already.
Right. They're like, all right, you're officially Ensign Crusher. And then Dr. Crusher's like, what? I got a demotion? No, that's not what happens. But, so, yeah, it's just baffling, because if you go to the Naked Now and like, oh, Wesley, you saved the ship, you're promoted to honorary ensign. That makes sense, because he did something. In this episode, he doesn't do anything, but Picard has this talk with the Traveler. It's like, Wesley's destined for great things. He's like Mozart, and I'm going to take 3 minutes to explain to you what a Mozart is. And yeah, so Picard's like, oh, I better promote him. But the Traveler explicitly says to not make Wesley aware of how good he is. Like, don't monkey with it, just try to nurture him. And you would think that you wouldn't want to have a very inconspicuous, or is it conspicuous? Oh my god, I don't know what that word means. A very obvious promotion. Like a very... Conspicuous, okay. A very conspicuous promotion where everybody would question why he got it. But of course nobody would question it, because that's... there's only a minute left in the episode, so who cares?
Yeah, apparently Wesley is going to develop the ability to change the universe with his thoughts, which is a nice little bit of foreshadowing here.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say about that. You know, you can take it at face value and appreciate just how ridiculous that is.
Like I was saying before, ultimately does not go anywhere satisfying. So it's really any amount of frustration or any amount of dislike you have for this decision is ultimately vindicated, because there was no payoff for this. That is good.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah. So anyway, they have this issue. Weird things begin happening on the Enterprise once they are in this far-flung region of space. People start seeing things. People start seeing things, and this is like a pretty cool concept, I think. Because people are seeing things from their past, from their memories. For example, Worf sees like his childhood pet. Yar's fixated on rape. The one guy in the cafeteria is imagining himself in a string quartet. It's a whole lot of these weird looks into people's psyche, which I think is also not explicitly quote Star Trek, but I think works very well. Originally, every single member of the bridge was going to have like their own little moment. We see Picard when he meets his mother. See some of the other ones. Like some of them got cut. Riker was going to have to confront like a bunch of his ex-lovers. Like it would be a huge group. It'd be pretty funny. Crusher was going to meet her late husband. It's a little emotional moment. But Geordi's scene was the one that the writers are the most excited about.
Yes.
Yeah. So Geordi was going to encounter like a futuristic analog of the KKK and stand up to them. It would be something that would like maybe traumatize him in the past, but now as an adult, as a member of the Enterprise, he would have the strength to stand up literally in the face of racism. But, the producers, they came down on it. Gene was on their side. They said, oh, that's not Star Trek. You got to leave that in Roots. We're not doing that kind of stuff on this show. And it really, that precipitated the decision with who was going to be the head of engineering. So we really should have seen that coming in a way, in an unfortunate way.
Yeah. And I mean, we both thought it was a great idea, but
right. They didn't listen to us.
No, I mean, when did they, huh?
Right.
But
we had a lot of good ideas, but
we did have a lot of good ideas. Sometimes they'd go through, a lot of the times they wouldn't, but I guess that's just show business, right?
It is. So yeah, all these scenes.
Speaking of these scenes, I want to spend a little bit of time on these scenes because they gave us quite a bit of grief.
They did. Boy, did they.
And first I'd like to talk about the pig.
Right. Not a pig, a Klingon Targ or whatever. Targ?
The pig.
Right.
The pig. So Gene brought her in from his, and I can only use so many quotation marks, exotic pet collection.
Yeah.
Along with the cat from the same scene.
Which was far less exotic.
Far less exotic, but he still considered her so.
Right. I think it was something about like the size of its tail.
Something like that. But anyway, the pig took a whole day. If you remember, the crew spent hours trying to wrangle that thing into that stupid fur coat.
Yeah, because it had to look. It couldn't look like a pig, obviously.
Right. And they did a fantastic job with that fur coat and little horns on it. But we were all just standing on set all day with the executive producer, just pleading with Gene over the phone to get back on set because it smelled so bad. I mean, it's literally you remember how long? But you remember how long it took to get that smell out of our clothes. It was awful.
Oh my god.
So, I mean, we're on the set for hours with just this pig running around, people trying to like wrangle it. It smells so bad. And hours later, Gene finally shows up, and he's the only one this pig will listen to, I guess. And he gets her to stand still so we could finally shoot the scene and wrap for the day. And I never felt so good going home.
Oh yeah.
At least up until that point.
I want, not everybody has worked on a set like production. I want you to realize that these studios are just like enclosed cubes in the middle of Los fucking Angeles with the hot sun pouring down on them. Imagine yourself just being stuck in that with perhaps the worst smelling animal on the planet, or at least what we thought it was.
what we thought it was. Right. Bit of a plot twist for the audience here. So we wrap up, go home. Next day we convene on set, and we're going to finish up some shots with the cat since we didn't get to obviously do that. We spent so much time on the pig. And we noticed the smell still lingering just as strong as it was the day before. And really going to take me some time to kind of get through this because I already want to throw up. But it turns out the smell was not it was not the pig. Turns out Denise was on a shower strike to protest her character's lack of involvement in the previous episode.
She was very, very worried about being written out. And
very worried.
And if you go back and watch the previous episode, Yar had nothing really to do.
Yeah, she kind of just stood on the bridge. And, that hits home even harder when you had that episode even before that, very much focused on her.
Right.
And I think she was looking for, a little more attention than what she got.
Well, she ultimately got it. I'll tell you
she definitely got it, as we will see. But these kinds of episodes really only ramped up as we approach the Skin of Evil.
Yes, which is the denouement of Denise's arc on production.
Yeah.
That is a story for another time. But what is the story for this time is one of those, like, an example of that attention that Denise did get, which
Yar did get a little bit here, yeah.
Yeah, so she was not so happy about this one. So, like I said, there's all these scenes of the characters encountering bits from their past and these, like, hallucinations, the pig being one example of those. So Yar's flashback was to being on her home planet. Like, she sees her cat, and that triggers this memory of her being back on her home planet, where she's, like, getting cornered by a rape gang, which it's explicitly said to be the phrase rape gang. Well,
yes, rape gang.
That aspect of her character wasn't set in stone until Jean met Denise. Originally, she was just kind of like a plain Jane security crew, a female security officer. That was basically it. That's shocking enough that you didn't really need to develop the character more. But
right.
Jean met her, and he suddenly had this idea that she would have this backstory of her, like, getting raped by the rape gangs and dealing with trauma and PTSD. It was a pretty inspired take on the character, and it just from meeting her, it shows that inspiration can really come from anywhere. But Denise, on the other hand, was not super happy with that. She took umbrage specifically to reading the line, quote, rape gang.
Yeah, I don't think that was the attention that she wanted.
It was not. And when you do these things, these shower strikes, you kind of, what is the opposite of currying favor? Like, you court, discord around you when you... Disfavor, perhaps, when you rile people up intentionally. So, I'm not happy with how the whole Denise thing went, but I can't say I really blame any of the actors involved for responding how they did. It was just a very unfortunate series of events.
Yeah, it couldn't really be helped.
It could not be helped.
I do take umbrage. I do take umbrage with the phrase rape gangs, however.
Yeah.
Insofar as it's nothing that any human being in real life has said or ever would say. Gangs do not exist to rape. There is no rape gang that just subsists for years on the idea that the people in the gang go out and rape.
Yeah, because it would be like, violent gangs. That's a very common phrase. Or just gangs.
Right.
Like, we are a gang. Like, maybe that's something people would say. But the specific label of rape gang, like, that's...
You can have a gang that goes out and incidentally gang rapes someone. I get it.
Right.
But you don't have a rape gang. At least no one's going to refer to a gang as a rape gang. Maybe they did make their gang based on the assumption that they would go out and rape every night. But it's like, that's not normal enough for anyone to refer to them as rape gangs. Did Yar grow up on a planet where rape gangs were common? Maybe she did.
But I guess so. I guess so. But even if that was the case, they would just be referred to as a gang because on that planet, gang and
That would
rape
just be
gang would
normal.
be synonymous.
Right. Maybe it was a poly gang culture or something. You know, like they had different kinds of gangs for different things.
Oh, maybe you'd have like a rape gang and like doing your tax returns gang. Both positive forces of positive and negative.
Yeah. Really a dichotomy.
Really.
Doing your taxes, raping.
Yeah. Two sides of the same coin, I like to think.
Truly.
But all that stuff in the episode itself was pretty interesting. Like, I liked the scene with Picard's mother, where he's like, Mama.
Maman. Yeah, and who were treated to yet another bit of French dialogue while both he and his mother speak in British accents.
Yes.
I guess I can kind of suspend my disbelief to the point that, yeah, maybe cultures have kind of crossed over enough at this point that French people would speak with British accents.
But they would speak French, is the thing. There's plenty of examples of non-dominant cultures existing within other cultures. And within those like little family bubbles, they generally speak the language that they grew up with or that they're more accustomed to. So,
so Picard is from France.
Right. So if let's say he's in France, you speak French, and then he moves somewhere else, which I'll accept, where he learns to speak English, and his mom did too because she speaks English too. If they go home in their house, they would probably speak French there. It just doesn't track to me, like because if in France they speak English, then why does Picard know French?
What I'm saying is, yeah, why does he know French? Yeah, and that's what I'm saying too. It's very odd to me that they treat French almost as his second language.
Right. When it
is his second language. I mean, he obviously speaks English fluently.
Right. But why?
Why? And so he refers to his mother as Maman.
Except she speaks English, so he wouldn't really.
She speaks English with an English accent, yeah.
Because
very odd.
When you're a kid, you learn how to call your mom and dad by the words that they teach you. And if she's going to teach him French, then she would logically speak French. And if she's speaking French enough that is how Picard learns to address his mother, then one could reason that they would speak French in any of their interactions.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe language has developed in as yet unforeseen ways in Star Trek.
Oh no, you see the universal translator in Picard's ear and his mother's ear.
Does the universal translator work on French?
It's too alien of a language to be in the translator.
But yeah, some of those scenes were good. I like the one where Picard steps out from the elevator just into space.
Yeah, that was cool. It was such an intriguing thing, such an intriguing idea that it was so much more interesting than anything else that came before it in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And putting aside like the complete nitpicking about the language, which is not really a notable issue, I liked the scene with his mom too. Like I thought that was cool because you can see like, you know, Picard recognizes that this is not his mother, that it's some alien thing going on, but he's still obviously very, very emotionally affected by seeing her. It's
a moment of vulnerability for him, which I guess we haven't been treated to as much yet.
But that worked. That worked for me. Basically all of it did. Like even that they spend a lot of time lingering on the guy playing in the string quartet, but it was that was the first hint we saw that something was going on. And I liked how it interrupted and completely upended the tone of everything. It was
yeah.
Because when the idea is like, oh, they're in this strange environment and like they don't really know what's going on. Well, we're gonna give you some of that. It's like here's a Baroque string quartet for 2 minutes. And you're like, what?
Yeah,
it works.
It was funny how it was kind of interspersed between the scenes of Picard running around all.
Yeah, and then they cut back to it.
Yeah. And then it just turns out the guy's eating lunch or something.
Right. And he's just so dissatisfied with his life that he's imagining himself doing something that he wants.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It was good.
So, yeah, they eventually Picard calls a state of emergency. They run through off screen. Riker realizes he was wrong about the Traveler,
Right.
and we have that long and drawn out scene in, I think, the medical bay.
Yeah.
where Crusher keeps reviving him.
Yeah, and the guy is saying things like rather cryptically. And there was a really cool line that I liked there, where I think it's Riker, might have been Picard, who's like, "Well, if you're this being, why haven't you reached out to us before?" And the Traveler just kind of like laughs at him for being so arrogant, and tells him as much. And I thought that was cool because it didn't really break with the that kind of condescending, gentle tone that the Traveler had throughout the whole episode, while still just kind of putting whoever said the line in their place. It really sold the omniscient, higher level being thing that they've been going for.
Yeah. That was a good choice, I think. Probably sold it in a way that Delancey's character didn't quite hit the mark at first.
Yeah, I think the reason that Q developed how he did was largely because of the way Delancey played the character. When you kind of have this prankster kind of feel to him, you want to play that up. You're not going to ask John Delancey, "Oh, come on to our set and deliver a dramatic 3-minute monologue," right? You're going to ask him to come on and put on a silly outfit and dance around for an episode.
That's right.
Good old John.
So this is around the time where the alien tells him, the Traveler, tells Picard that Wesley's special, right?
Yeah, he says, "Everybody out of the room except Picard. Gotta talk to you."
Yeah, well, so he says, "I'd like a word with the captain alone."
Yes.
He says it kind of like a white 15-year-old girl.
There's a lot of that going on,
which was kind of a weird tone for him to take, but so we have that bit, and then it's time to save the day, right? We have to rely on him to save the day. They go down to engineering, and actually, here's a fun bit. The whole Act 5 engine room scene was pretty much entirely improv.
The climax of the episode.
No one really planned for this in a way that they should have.
Right.
Because the script called for a much more interactive set, but because of time constraints, we really had no choice but to stage all of that action at that big static engine room table the team had made. They kind of cobbled it together for the pilot, and we never got around to updating it in any way.
Because what's supposed to be happening is like, it's this dramatic, we got to get the engines working. All right, you pull that lever, hit those buttons, work on this console. Like a very dramatic, I don't really like machining kind of scene.
Yeah. Well, I mean, earlier in the episode, you have, like you said about the little streamers going around the Enterprise and stuff like that. You have kind of a visual representation of what's going on. Right? When Wesley and the Traveler are looking at the computer and trying to like configure whatever's going on there.
Configure.
What did I say? Configurate?
Yeah. That's the conversate of configure.
That's the conversate of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to configure the engine or whatever. But this whole scene, everyone's just sitting at this flat table.
Right.
Kind of miming working.
Yeah, like they're just tapping on black screens with nothing on them.
Yeah. And I think it goes without saying that the entire team did a great job of pretending to work off these little panes of plastic. But Menyuk, the actor for the Traveler, I think he really stole the show when he right at the height of the scene, shoved his hand into a hollow compartment of the table, and all of us, I mean, the whole crew was so taken aback that we had to retake that scene. But luckily, that allowed us to give his resourceful contribution there a much greater presence in frame.
Well, it was so.
I really loved that.
It was so perfect because the way that the camera was positioned, you couldn't see what was in that compartment. So the viewer is like, oh yeah, of course one would use that. That's there to.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But from his
shove your hand
perspective, it's just a plastic cubby with nothing in it, and he nailed it. He nailed it. We talked before about kind of Will Wheaton learning improv from the guy. Well, you can see why he's such a fit to be the teacher.
Right, and I mean, just his ability to shove his hand into that hole, I think, speaks volumes here.
Well, it's not the ability to do it; it's the ability to know to do it.
To know to do it, and yeah, it's really what resulted was true movie magic there.
Mm-hmm. And I think the results of that scene speak for themselves. It's a very fitting climax for the episode.
It is. It's enthralling, engrossing, enticing. It's all you want from a climax. And so they spend a tense couple of minutes at the table, furiously slapping their hands on it, and the Traveler disappears, and the Enterprise makes it back to where they were before this sleigh ride.
Well, let's not forget the contributions from everybody on board the Enterprise crew, how they had to hold their hands up to the sky and help the Traveler charge his spirit bomb with their energy.
That's right. And Picard gives up immediately.
Right. Picard... I forgot about that. Yeah, so he makes an announcement on the PA, and he's like, everybody on board the Enterprise, it is absolutely vital that we all send our mental energy to support the Traveler. He's working very hard, and he needs us to all envision a positive outcome of this to work. So he ends that announcement, and then 2 seconds later, he's like, it's not working. What's happening?
Yeah, he gave up very quickly. He was the first person to give up.
Record time on giving up.
Record time. Yeah. But luckily it all works out in the end. The Traveler disappears somewhere, I guess. I kind of was under the assumption that he died, but I guess he does not.
Yeah, he just, you would think he died, but they reintroduce him, and he's in two more episodes, I believe. 3 total.
Yeah.
So, it's, can't wait to see him again on our podcast. And I think season 4 or 5.
We got a way to go.
We do.
I'll be happy to see him again.
Yeah, it's right now we're flung out in space 700 million light years away from him, but over the course of 4 seasons we'll cover that distance and get back to him.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Any other
but yeah, for all its faults, this episode was pretty entertaining and pretty decent.
It was. It did a lot of things right. It had some stumbles. It's still a season 1 episode, but definitely the most enjoyable and the most interesting by far, I would say.
The most coherent, too.
Yeah. And just, we talked about the tone, just by establishing the Star Trek tone, just a very, very valuable episode as well.
Yeah.
So, good job. You've,
good job.
Where no one has gone before on this Valentine's Day, you've won our hearts. So
that's right.
That'll do it for this episode of the Readier Room. Join us next time where we tackle the next episode. And until then, everybody, stay ready.
The troublesome little man-child.
Consider that in the history of many worlds, there have always been disposable creatures.
Do you consider yourself superior to us?
Should have told him to mind his own damn business.
But I stroked the beard thusly. Do I not appear more intellectual?
Computer! Freeze program.
It's not a promising beginning.